told the story of my mother's death many times over the past 10 years. She died of pancreatic cancer when she was 57. I've shared her story about her illness and her passing, particularly in relation to Purple Our World, our family social media initiative. I've talked about it a lot, but it has always been her story. So tonight, I want to tell a story I haven't told before, mine, about being 27 and losing my mum and how it changed everything. I found out in March 2013. We were at my aunt and uncle's home preparing for Pesach, where I was about to sit at the table alongside 4 generations of my family. My nephew was not yet 4 months old. He was cooing next to us and smiling with his big bright blue eyes when my parents walked in. They were quiet. My dad spoke, his voice shaking. Doctors have found a mass on Mum's pancreas. It's cancer. It's such a frightening word, cancer. But when you put pancreas in front of it, the fear increases tenfold. Because as the statistics told us at the time, Mum only had a 5% chance of surviving this thing. At first there was optimism and hope. The surgery was possible. It was actually booked in. And just as quickly it was cancelled. The tumour was in a tricky place to operate, so it needed chemo first. Still, there was hope. Then it was declared inoperable. Full stop. There would be no surviving. It was no longer a matter of will she survive this cancer. It was a matter of how can we make her as comfortable as we can until the cancer kills her. At the age of just 26 years old, I realized my mum was going to die. I had my whole life ahead of me, yet I was facing the end of hers. It's a running joke in my family that Mum and I were born under the same star sign, so we clashed a lot during my hormonal teenage years. We would argue about what I was wearing, where I was going, whether I was working hard enough, whether I was annoying my sister too much. We'd argue over the fact that I'd take her car when I had a free period at the end of the day at school. I was a student, she was a teacher, and I left her to hitch a ride home with a friend. We'd argue about what was on the television. She wanted sci-fi. I never did. But I was finally on the other side of those tricky years. I was on the side where I'd happily lie in bed with her, aimlessly watching her sci-fi trash, while we debriefed after a long day. And those are some of my favourite memories. And I had always looked forward to growing into adulthood with Mum by my side. I thought about everything that was ahead of me. I never imagined my mum wouldn't be there. Marriage, children, first steps, first fevers, first days of school, last days of school. And through my heartache, all I could think about was that I would never be given the chance to be a mum alongside my own. My children would never have the privilege of knowing their nana, and she would never have the nachas of knowing them. Tears streamed down my face, and I remember distinctively sitting on the couch, and my aunt came quietly and sat down next to me. She had lost her own parents before she was married. She understood what it felt like. Her mum never knew her children, and she took my hand knowingly, and we sat together in silence. Throughout my mum's illness, I tried to bring some normalcy to it all, to live normally. I got up, I got dressed, I went to work. She needed that from me, but I needed to be with her. So I worked from home a couple of days each week, because that way I could see that she was still there. She was eating, she was drinking, she was moving, she was laughing. Sometimes I drove her to the hospital. She never let me attend her appointments with the doctor, but I took her to radiation every day. I helped her shower. I held her chemo bag so it didn't get wet. I listened to her gush about her grandson to the nurses in recovery and then watched her writhe in pain as the painkillers wore off. I held her hand when she couldn't sleep. I opened the fridge door when her hands were too cold from the chemo, and I made bottles so she could feed my nephew. I drove her to his kindy to pick him up. Sometimes I felt jealous that my sister got to have that, her son and his nana together, the way it should be, and something I would never have. At other times, I was grateful that at least my mum had met one grandchild. At least she had the chance to be a nana, even for a short while. My children and my nephews and my niece are fortunate to have multiple parental figures in their grandparents, aunts and uncles, and even great aunts and uncles. And never have I grasped onto that concept more than when Mum was sick. Because I knew that in the absence of sharing those moments with my own children, I needed to appreciate that I was making those memories with my nephew. Over 16 months, there were 13 rounds of chemo, 10 days of radiation, procedures to remove fluid buildup. She lost her hair and grew thin, and for brief moments, she lost her smile. Sometimes she couldn't eat, some days she couldn't even move from her bed. I knew she was scared, even when she tried to stay strong. I was scared too. But we made some beautiful memories. I got engaged, and when I showed her the ring on my hand, we both cried tears of relief, collapsing in the kitchen together, knowing that she would be there to walk me down the aisle. Those months were a time, though, of intense juxtapositions. I was planning my wedding at the same time as taking her to hospital appointments, at the same time as she was planning her funeral, choosing dresses while she was being fitted for wigs. I'll never forget her turning to me while she was trying on her dress and saying, "If I knew I'd be this skinny, I would have chosen a more fitted design." I was choosing songs for my reception while she was choosing pallbearers. So many decisions were made with her comfort in mind, like having a long break between the chuppah and reception so she could rest. My final wedding dress fitting was at home, and I have a vivid memory of Mum standing in our beautiful dining room, watching the designer place the flowers on my dress. Mum softly saying higher or lower, on the hip or on the train, with a heartbroken smile on her face. I'd often dreamed of my wedding day. We both did. In the end, though, nothing was the way I'd dreamed it. I never dreamed she wouldn't be able to wake me up at sunrise with my coffee, or giggle alongside my bridesmaids while we listened to music and got our hair done. But she was there, and in that way, it was an absolute dream come true. Nothing was going the way I had hoped, but everything was going right because my mum was still alive. Mum spent a lot of the morning in her room summoning the energy to simply shower. But the moment she stepped into the living room, the energy shifted. It lifted. She was here. She watched my bridesmaids button up my dress and held my dress up while I put my shoes on. She put my earrings on. She stood in front of me while my veil was placed in my hair, and she was in all of our photos. She held my hand down the aisle, and she was the most beautiful person in the room, dressed in fiery orange on the dance floor. That's how I remember it. I never saw her pacing the foyer at the reception, my aunts rubbing her back because she was in so much pain. Things deteriorated soon after that, but she was determined to give me happy memories, like being in my home when my husband and I hosted our first Shabbat dinner. I remember packing the car with everything I had cooked for Shabbat, telling her that we would move the dinner to her house because that's where she would be more comfortable, only to have her march me right back home again. She needed to give us the honor of sharing Shabbat. She needed to give me the honor and the memory of her in my home. Never mind that soup and scallopini sauce would spill all over my car, which it did, and the smell lingered for ages. I argued with her about it at the time, but she insisted, and I get it now. I have 3 children. They are my heart and my soul. It's what my mum called my sister and I. And I would do anything to give them the kind of memory she gave me. She lay on the couch for most of that night, but she was there as we enjoyed Shabbat as a family in the home that I was building for my future family. I was in a cloud of haze at that moment, arguing with her while she lay in her bed, but I know now that she was simply being a mother. My mum died 2 days after that Shabbat. There were 30 people in the room with her. Over and over, I told her that we were going to be okay, we would look after each other, and that we would keep on living. Over and over, I told her that it was okay to let go. Throughout the day, she opened her eyes a few times. once to look at my nephew, once to look at her father, and the last thing I saw her do was look at my dad. It was Mum's wish to die at home. I don't know why, nor do I want to know. But I like to think it's because she wanted to make sure we would be looked after, and we were. Water was placed in my hand, sheets were changed, tea was made, and while tears were shed, laughter was also heard, because that's the very essence of my mum. People had warned me about the funeral, but I don't think any warnings can really prepare you to bury your mother with 4 healthy, living grandparents by your side. Seeing the coffin draped in black, knowing that she was inside. At the cemetery, seeing her name on the plaque and hearing the thud of earth on the coffin. I felt very unprepared for that sound when I heard it, and I can still hear it now. And every time I hear it, I'm taken back there, holding my husband's hand, my face buried in my father's shoulder, looking over at my 4 grandparents at my mother's funeral. Before Mum died, I promised that I would speak for her when she couldn't. I promised that her grandchildren would know her name and her love, and that we would teach them. And I truly believe that each of my children was sent to me from her, even though she'd be laughing her ass up there that I, the girliest girl there ever was growing up, now have 3 boys. Each one of them honouring her through their names. What I didn't expect was that when my children were born, it's not so much that I teach them about her, but at the same time, she is in them. Raphael has inherited her ability to fear even the smallest of things. Archer has inherited her undeniable loyalty. And while my little miracle Judah is too young to know what he carries from his nana, they are inextricably linked. For she sent him to me on my birthday. I gave him life on the same day that she gave me mine. The bizarre way, they all love to eat lemons. In this way, she's by my side. In the Sephardi food we eat, my kids eat curry, but they won't touch gefilte fish. And the things we say, Sephardi terms of endearment like abdallah kana, which means you are my heart, I would die for you, and awafi when they burp, which makes the baby giggle every single time. She is by my side at every moment in her love that I feel, and the way that my children say that they love their nana too, even though they never met her. In her absence, in the sadness I still feel when I see something she never will, and in the way that I still can't feel proud without the accompanying heartbreak, without being reminded. Every merit certificate, every cricket wicket taken, sport carnival and songs sung at the top of their lungs, every crawl, every step, every achievement, big and small, every scratch and bruise. I didn't get to ask her what my name would have been if I was a boy, but my sister knew the answer, and Archer now bears the Hebrew name Aharon. A few hours after Raphael was born, my husband stood at the end of my bed holding him, looking after our baby, while my dad stood by my side, looking after me, his baby. I looked to the other side. My mum should have been there holding my hand. When I had to rush Rafi to the hospital at just 5 weeks old because he couldn't breathe properly, I realised that this is what it would be like for the rest of my life. When COVID broke out and I had an 8-week-old Archer who didn't sleep, a 3-year-old Rafi home from kindy and an immunocompromised husband, and I'd suddenly lost my village because of lockdowns. When I sat in the special care nursery every day for 5 weeks, holding Judah, my premature 1.6 kilogram baby, willing him to drink just a little bit more so he could come home. I needed her hand, her embrace. I needed her voice and words of comfort, and I needed her. And when we surprised Rafi and Archer by bringing Judah home from the hospital 5 weeks after his birth, I desperately wanted to see her face sharing in that moment. My children will always need their mother, and I will always need mine. Every time I talk about her to friends and strangers, I miss her. Right now, I miss her. I'm sad that Nana isn't around to share our troubles and our triumphs, to give her grandchildren 12 kisses a day to help them grow, because apparently that's how you grow. I'm sad that even though I can do all of those things, I can't do them alongside her. Because this is grief. In Judaism, our mourning stops. My mourning period finished after a year. But grief is ongoing. It's always present. Sometimes in the shadows, sometimes buried, sometimes shown, but always there. In every decision made, every emotion felt, every birthday, every smile, and every tear, no matter how happy I am, there is always, always a tinge of heartbreak. My grief is my love for her with nowhere to go. But my resolve is strong. I try to live my life in a way that honors hers, her life and her death. And part of that is Purple Our World. For 10 years it has been my therapy. It's cathartic. It gives me purpose. It connected me with others who have been through what I have been through. For years I felt alone. None of my friends had yet to lose a parent, thank God. They didn't know what I was feeling. Just 4 months after Mum's death, we vowed that families would not feel the same way we did, alone and uneducated. And Purple Our World gave me something to do. It gives me a way to ensure Mum's story and our story is never forgotten. We know that not everyone can give money, but everyone can help us share what happened to Mum so that we can change the course of pancreatic cancer history. 10 years later, our small family initiative has grown exponentially, and the tides are slowly turning. I like to think that Mum has had a little something to do with this, because we continue to tell her story. I know it's up to me to make my mum's voice heard. For her, for me, for my dad, my sister, my grandparents, my aunts, and all of Mum's family. It's up to me to make my mum's voice heard for my kids, because through me and through my ongoing grief, they know her. Thank you.